Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and today I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Law Brief Publishing. It's an important book on ASTs, I'll get it right in a minute, Assured Shorthold Tenancies. This book is called A Practical Guide to the Ending of Assured Shorthold Tenancies, including notices, disrepair, deposits and certificates in England. It's in a second edition and it's been written by Elizabeth Dwomoh. This is an important book, I believe, for practitioners. It'll also be very useful for anybody who is a tenant because at the moment the law is a bit confused, and we do have this really serious issue that has developed of no fault removals, if I can put it that way, of tenancies. In other words, effectively ending a tenancy even though there hasn't been any fault. And the problem we have there is something which Parliament will legislate on. Now, Law Brief Publishing have produced this work, and I've given the title of the book, we'll look at it now, Coping with the Most Common Form of Tenancy. Check out this excellent and concise guide for practitioners. Here it is, little paperback, just over 100 pages long. There's the spine. You can see virtually nothing of the blurb on the back, I must say, but there we go. Now, in the book itself, as I said, paperback, there's no index. There's a lot of stuff about the books that Law Brief Publishing publish. There's quite a useful set of links right at the back of the book, and then you get to the actual, within the 200 pages, just under that, you get the various headings. We just have a look at those in a minute. Let's go to the front of the book. There's a little notice about Elizabeth, barrister from Lamb Chambers. Then you've got the actual front page, second edition, of course, and the blurb again there. And then what we do is we have a dedication. I put a dedication in. I don't say anything. Elizabeth and I do not review books that we don't like, so I'm not prepared to start criticising books. I don't think it's fair. It's not like a film. A book is different. A lot of work goes into it. If it's not a good book, I'm not going to review it. It's as simple as that. This is a good book. The preface is always worth reading because it's an amendment of what has happened recently since the creation of ASTs. The Assured Shorthold Tenancy is a creature of statute. Exactly. Therefore, it's governed, like many things now, by the Acts of Parliament, the rules, and the interpretation. Law is stated as correct on the 4th of July 2022. Then we move into contents. You can see the contents, quite detailed, nicely laid out, the definitions, contractual terms, termination and so forth, and the various ways in which ASTs are terminated. And moving on, you can see a few more the various bars to the termination. Then you have at the end the various points about possession proceedings themselves, and then enforcement, and you can see how the book is structured. There are sort of a few little footnotes which you can probably see. There isn't an index as such, but you should be able, within the structure of the book, to find things. And there are, of course, there is paragraphing throughout, so that is quite helpful. And what I did like is the key points that are brought in at the front of the chapters. Now, what do we say about this book? Because this is an area I have practiced in. I haven't had a lot of work recently because of the pandemic, but I've done quite a lot of work in this area in the county court in the past. And it's an important area because it affects people's lives. And quite often it's a difficult decision for the judge as well. They do tend, in my experience, to try to be as fair as they can with the tenants. But what we do say here is this, that ever since 1988, the enactment of the Housing Act came in at that time, and the type of tenancy known as the Assured Shorthold Tenancy has become the most common form of tenancy in the residential private sector. And that's really why there has been obviously a substantial amount of litigation in this area, and that's why I think the book is quite helpful for practitioners and for litigants in person. We consider that if you are a practitioner then involved in or likely to become involved in landlord and tenant matters, you'll find this book from Law Brief Publishing an eminently useful and certainly practical guide to this and more often than not controversial and fraught area of law, because it is. The fact that this book is now out in a second edition attests to its usefulness, reliability and the common sense approach which it adopts. And the author is Elizabeth Dwomoh, who knows what she's writing about. She's an experienced landlord and tenant member of council, and she gives us, I think, a succinct yet in-depth examination of the most common regulatory and procedural, in her words, tripwires. She uses that word, and I think it's quite helpful because they are tripwires, which are things you encounter when you're bringing an assured shorthold tenancy to an end, whether it be as mainly as a landlord. Obviously, it also reveals the complexities that are most likely to crop up and outlines the means by which such problems can be resolved. And remember, you've got to talk about the type of agreement, because that is sometimes where the problems are. At least that's what I've found in practice. Now, the Assured Shorthold Tenancy, she says, is a creature of statute. She starts the book off with that, which unfortunately has revealed a considerable number of flaws. Currently, however, but not conclusively, recent legislation indicates a commitment to the abolition of the no-fault eviction, which I referred to in my opening remarks, although unfortunately there is a substantial lobby which opposes it. Obviously, I'm not going to mention names, but a number of leading politicians have called for abolition, and I think personally I'm in favour of getting rid of the no-fault eviction, because you have to give tenants some sort of protection. Landlords get a lot of protections as it is, but I do think that you shouldn't just be able to kick people out. Obviously, the concept of the assured shorthold tenancy, as I see it, both as a teacher and as a lawyer, is that it's from X date to Y date. So therefore, it's firm about what sort of dates you're going to be actually acting as a tenant in a property, holding the tenancy for that particular period. And that does give a little bit of firmness and a little bit of stability to the landlord, because obviously in times of inflation they may have to change their rent levels. That obviously is a problem with high inflation. In the meantime, however, notwithstanding the business of the no-fault eviction, the book, as the author describes it, should provide tenants and those defending them with a guide to spotting unlawful termination by overtly zealous landlords. And there are a few of them that I've come across, I have to say. The very good reason then, if ever there was one, excuse me, as to why every practitioner in this field should actually get a copy of the book. Also, the second edition now continues to offer us excellent guidance on ASTs, and it gives legal practitioners, managing agents, landlords and tenants alike a practical overview of the law governing the termination of such tenancies. And Elizabeth delves into some of these tripwires, as she calls them, by covering a variety of areas. And I'm just going to mention them because that's what the content of the book is. The following: the termination of an assured shorthold tenancy by a tenant, termination of an AST by a landlord using the procedure under Section 8 of the Housing Act, that's a common one, termination of an AST by a landlord using the Section 21 procedure of the Housing Act, and then regulatory bars, this is towards the end of the book, to a landlord serving a notice under Section 21 of the Housing Act, advice on the court process, which I think will be helpful for unrepresented litigants because they won't have any money, and then enforcement processes. And in fact, I think it's the sort of concise guide that you will need for your practice at the beginning, because it really will depend on what the case is as to whether you'll need to delve into the loose-leafed versions of landlord and tenant, which may be something you need to look at if there's some case law. The date of publication of the new paperback is cited as the 31st of August 2022. Quick look at it again. There it is. Paperback, spine, and then the back again. And then just opening it in the middle. Let's see what we've got here. This is the Section 8. The Section 8 procedure is actually quite a substantial part of the book. It starts on page 45, and you can see the structure. You get key points, then you get an introduction to the Act, and then you go into the wording. And I think that's quite important. It does very much depend on what your case is about. But generally speaking, I think this book will be of great help to those people who've got a problem. And I really would like to thank Lord Beef Publishing and Elizabeth Dwomoh very much indeed for producing what is an excellent book. Thank you to all. Bye-bye.